Hi, I'm here to talk to you about the quote sandwich. If you've been told you're doing an essay and you need to use sources, you're probably wondering how to integrate them into your paper. They go into your paragraph and you're not sure where. Maybe you don't even know how to do a paragraph. But if you need to use a quote, a good way to do that is to use a quote sandwich. So, quote sandwich. There are 3 parts to a quote sandwich. That's why it's a sandwich. The first piece of bread is the introduction. This is where you let the reader know you're about to use a quote, so you introduce it. The second part is the meat of the sandwich, which is the quote itself. And the third part is your analysis. If you're looking at this sandwich, you can see the analysis part, that third piece of bread, is the thickest because you're putting the most work into that part of the sandwich. This is where you make your analysis of the quote so that the speaker that you're quoting isn't speaking for you, but rather you're speaking for them. So this structure is going to help you integrate your sources and also take control of them. Here's an example. I'm going to use the same quote twice. First, positive, and then second, negative. I'll annotate the parts and read it aloud. Financial aid is a complete racket. As Senator Janet Reno said in a recent federal debate, that's the introduction. If bankers can borrow money for 0.5%, why are we charging students 3.5% or more? There's the quote itself. Her question is a good one, but the answer is pretty clear. Bankers are the ones loaning money to us. They are in the business of profit. And clearly student loans are pure profit to the loaner because they always get paid back. If not by the student, they were paid by the government who takes the money from the taxpayer. All of this is the analysis part. So that third piece of bread is indeed the largest because it is the most important. If you still don't believe me, let's take a look at the same quote, this time in a negative context. Financial aid is not supposed to be a crutch for lazy students. Misguided politicians don't understand this, but it's still a fact. For example, that's a lead-in. Senator Janet Reno asked in a recent federal debate, if bankers can borrow money for 0.05%, why are we charging students 3.5% or more? So here's your quote. Because, Ms. Reno, students aren't contributing much to the economy. Bankers, on the other hand, contribute to our very financial futures. Students are a drain on taxpayers and arguably shouldn't get any loans at all to go to college. If they just work hard, they won't need a handout, so let's not encourage them to be lazy by making loan money cheap and easy to get. This very painful analysis shows that the speaker doesn't agree with Janet Reno, and it's the same quote. So you can do magical things with your sandwich. Let's talk about the pieces of the sandwich a little bit more specifically. The introduction part is really important because you don't want your quote to appear out of nowhere. Also, it's very important that we know who is speaking. So that's what you use that part to set it up with. The most common one that students use is according to X. But if you keep using that over and over, it's going to be painful for you and for your reader. So there are many ways you can do it. I've only given you a few. I want to point out 2 things in this list. If you use a word like suggests, this isn't the same as proves, so it's kind of setting you up to argue with something, and you're allowed to argue. You're absolutely allowed to argue. If you wanted to let us know why we should care about the speaker, you could use your quote to set that up also. The president of whatever, putting some credibility in place. Okay, we can move on to looking at the quote itself. Students often like to guess where they put the punctuation with quotes because they think it's confusing. And it is confusing. That's why the internet exists, to help us with our confusion. So look up APA or MLA, whichever your instructor is asking you to use, and make sure you look up in-text citations. This is different from the bibliography format. In-text citations are those that you're using in your own text. Finally, let's talk about how to get into that analysis part. Students' most favorite way to get out of the quote and into their analysis is to say, this quote shows that. There's nothing wrong with that phrase, but if you use it over and over, it gets clunky. So I've given you a list. It's certainly not the only words that you can use, but you can see that you can do many different things. You can agree, you can argue, you can continue, or you can summarize with your signal phrase. Finally, if you need more help and this quote sandwich has confused you in any way, I would suggest speaking to the PCC librarians who are masters of using sources. You can visit your RWC on campus, your ALC lab, or just speak to your reading and writing teachers. Good luck.